Texas summer of 1945, a woman's hand trembles as it reaches for something unfamiliar. The fingers pale and dirt-stained wrap around cold glass. Condensation beads on the surface running in slow rivulets down green-tinted curves. The label reads Coca-Cola in bold white script letters that seem to glow in the afternoon light. She lifts the bottle with both hands as though it might explode. The cap comes off with a sharp hiss. The sound cuts through the humid air like a small rebellion. Bubbles rise inside the dark liquid, sparking and dancing toward the surface. She brings it to her lips, tastes fizz for the first time. The sensation bites like tiny electric shocks against her tongue, sweet and sharp and utterly foreign. Around her, barbed wire gleams in the Texas sun. Watchtowers stand rigid against the sky so blue it hurts to look at. The uniform she wears carries the eagle and swastika of the Third Reich, now faded and salt-stained from weeks at sea. Her name is Margaret Weber. Her friends call her Greta. She is 22 years old. She trained as a Red Cross nurse in Hamburg before the war pulled her into chaos. For 3 years, she patched wounds that never seemed to close, watched boys die in hospital beds, that smelled of blood and carbolic soap and despair. She was told that capture meant starvation, that American prisons were death camps with different flags, that the enemy would humiliate her, break her, leave her to rot in cages built from cruelty and revenge. No one told her they would give her ice cream. No one told her they would hand her a cold bottle of something that tasted like celebration, like freedom, like a world she had been taught did not exist. Her voice, older now, weathered by decades, carries across the years. They told us Americans would starve us, that captivity meant death. No one told us they'd give us ice cream. The question hangs in the thick Texas air. When your enemy treats you better than your own country ever did, who becomes the real enemy? Summer of 1943. 2 years earlier, the wheat fields of France burned under the weight of retreat. Their gold turns to ash beneath boot and tread. From those fields where the air still reeks of smoke and iron, a line of prisoners winds its way toward captivity. Among them march women who once wielded pens, bandages, and typewriters more often than rifles. Their uniforms still carry the sharp creases of bureaucracy, but their eyes carry the fatigue of endless war. Margaret Weber keeps her gaze fixed forward. The tight braid at her nape prickles with sweat. She walks with measured dignity, though her palms clench inside her pockets, nails pressing crescent moons into her flesh. Each step forward feels hollow, as though the ground beneath is shifting toward a reality none can yet name. To her right walks Elise Koch, older by nearly a decade, 32. She once transcribed speeches in Berlin's marble halls, her fingers flying across typewriter keys, while men in expensive suits decided the fates of nations. Now those same fingers grip the straps of a worn canvas pack. Her lips are set in a hard line. Her silence is a shield sharper than any blade. The women whisper among themselves as they walk. Rumors spread like contagion through the ranks. American prisons are worse than Russian camps. They will chain us in dark cells and throw away the keys. They will take everything. Our names, our dignity, our lives. The train that carries them west rattles with uncertainty. Its windows offer flashes of the world beyond barbed wire. Children chase chickens in dusty yards. Farmers bend their backs to soil that doesn't care who wins the war. Life continues ordinary and strange while the prisoners hurtle toward the unknown. When the sea finally rises to meet their gaze, it is vast and blue and merciless. Greta presses her forehead against the cool window glass. She has never seen the ocean before. It stretches to the horizon like liquid infinity. She thinks of her mother back in Hamburg, thinks of the letters that arrived less and less frequently, each one thinner than the last, the paper rough, the words more desperate. We are rationing everything now. 800 calories a day if we are lucky. Your sister faints at school. The twins cry from hunger. Bread is stretched with sawdust. We boil leather for soup. Greta closes her eyes. The guilt sits heavy in her chest. Elise's voice cuts through her thoughts, low and hard. Do not expect mercy. They will try to break us. That is what enemies do. Greta nods but says nothing. What is there to say? They have all been prepared for this. Their officers drilled it into them during training. The Americans are soft, yes, but that softness hides calculated cruelty. They will smile while they starve you. They will offer false kindness to extract information. They will play at civilization while planning your destruction. At best, they'll throw us stale bread and lock us in cages. At worst, well, they all know what the worst looks like. They have seen the propaganda films, the photographs, the stories whispered in the dark. The ship crosses the Atlantic in 12 days. 12 days of gray waves and gray skies, and the gray faces of women who have stopped speaking. They huddle in the hold, sharing body heat, sharing fear. When they finally reach American soil, it is summer. The heat is different here, wet and heavy like breathing through cloth. They are herded onto trucks, driven through countryside that seems impossible in its greenness. Texas. Someone says the word like a prayer or a curse. The trucks rumble down roads that stretch straight as ruler lines. The landscape is flat and endless, nothing like the rolling hills of Germany. Nothing like the bombed-out cities they left behind. Here, cattle graze in fields that go on forever. Barns stand red and proud against the horizon. The sky is so wide it makes Greta dizzy. Then the camp appears. Greta's breath catches. This is wrong. Everything about it is wrong. The fences gleam in the afternoon sun, barbed wire pulled taut against posts painted white. Watchtowers stand at each corner. Yes, but they look almost decorative in the golden light. Within the walls, she can see order. Wooden barracks painted with precision. Laundry lines strung neatly between buildings. Flowers. Actual flowers growing in small beds near the entrance. In the distance, she hears something that makes no sense at all. The crack of wood against lather. Laughter. The sound of men shouting in English, not in anger but in play. This is the trick, Elise hisses beside her. They make it look pleasant, but the cruelty is hidden. It always is. The women are led through the gates. Guards stand at attention, rifles slung over shoulders, but their faces show no malice. Some look bored, some look curious. One young guard chews gum with his mouth open, watching the prisoners with the same mild interest he might give to cattle being unloaded at market. They are processed, names recorded, photographed, issued bedding and basic supplies. The routine is efficient but not harsh. No one shouts, no one strikes them. The guards speak in calm voices, gesturing toward buildings explaining rules that seem almost reasonable. You will work. You will be paid in camp currency. You will receive 3 meals a day. You will attend roll call morning and evening. You will be treated according to the Geneva Convention. The words sound like lies. They must be lies. But then comes the mess hall. Greta's first sight of it almost undoes her composure entirely. The building is large and clean. Long tables run in neat rows. The floor is swept. The windows let in afternoon light that makes everything glow. But it is not the structure that stops her heart. It is what she sees inside. A machine hums softly in the corner, pale and cream-colored. A guard stands beside it, scooping something white and frozen into bowls. The bowls are handed to prisoners already seated. Men in khaki uniforms laugh as they eat. Their faces show pure, uncomplicated joy. Ice cream. The word surfaces in Greta's mind like something from a fairy tale. She has not seen ice cream since before the war. Even then, it was a rare luxury, something saved for special occasions, for birthdays and holidays that seemed like they belonged to a different lifetime. But here it sits on metal trays, scooped in generous portions, melting slowly in the heat, available to prisoners, to enemies. Her eyes track across the tables. On each one stand bottles, dark glass catching the light, rows and rows of them. The label is unmistakable. Coca-Cola. She has seen that script before, years ago, in a Berlin cafe where diplomats gathered. It was smuggled goods then, forbidden, American, a symbol of the decadence they were taught to reject. Now it stands openly, bottles sweating with condensation, within reach. A trick, Elise says. Her voice shakes with barely contained rage. Propaganda. They want us to think they're merciful. Yet even as she speaks, Greta sees Elise's eyes linger on the sweating glass, sees the way her throat works as she swallows. Hunger does not lie. Thirst does not care about ideology. A guard steps forward. He is young, maybe 28. His uniform is pressed but not stiff. His face carries no cruelty. When he speaks, his voice has the rounded vowels of the American Midwest. The sounds are familiar somehow, like an echo of something Greta heard long ago. Welcome to Camp Swift, he says in careful accented German. My name is William Schmidt. You can call me Bill. You'll be assigned bunks and given an orientation. If you have questions, you can ask any guard. We're here to make sure you're treated fairly. His German is clumsy but sincere. Greta stares at him. Schmidt, a German name. But his accent is purely American. She does not understand what she is seeing. Bill hands out trays with careful detachment. When it is Greta's turn, their eyes meet. She searches his face for hostility, for triumph, for the gloating victory of a captor over the captured. She finds none of it. Instead, she sees something that terrifies her more than hatred ever could. She sees patience, curiosity, a silent invitation to see beyond suspicion. Behind Bill stands another man, older, 42 maybe. His uniform carries the insignia of a captain. His arms are folded across his chest. The brim of his cap shadows a face that might be smiling, might not. Hard to tell. Captain Robert Hayes. He has overseen hundreds of arrivals. Stood at this exact spot and watched each group step through the gates with dread carved into their posture. He knows this moment well. The disbelief, the guarded awe, the way propaganda unravels in the face of something as simple as a hot meal. He often says to his men, though, the prisoners do not know this yet. We fight wars with bullets, but we win them with hamburgers. The women are given their trays. The weight is substantial. Real food, mashed potatoes whipped to cream, meatloaf still steaming, green beans, bread with butter. And at the end of the line, the choice ice cream or Coca-Cola, or both. Greta stands paralyzed. The tray feels like evidence of something impossible. She looks at Elise, whose face has gone pale. Around them, other women stare at their plates with expressions ranging from confusion to suspicion to barely concealed longing. They find seats. The metal chairs scrape against the floor. For a long moment, no one moves. The food sits untouched. It could be poisoned. It could be a test. It could be the prelude to some elaborate humiliation. Then someone lifts a fork, then another. Then the dam breaks and they are all eating. Not slowly or carefully, but with the desperate hunger of people who have forgotten what fullness feels like. The mashed potatoes are smooth and rich. The meatloaf has flavor, actual spices, not just salt and hope. The bread is soft. The butter is real. Greta's first spoonful of ice cream passes her lips like a dream she is afraid to swallow. Vanilla. The word forms in her mind. Soft, almost romantic. She had imagined sweetness buried forever under rubble, had accepted that such things belonged to the past, to a world that no longer existed. But here it is, cold and perfect, melting too quickly, running across her tongue. The sweetness is almost painful. It floods her senses, makes her eyes water. She does not know if she wants to laugh or cry. Across the table, Elise presses her spoon down hard, resisting, fighting. Her jaw clenches, her knuckles go white. Finally, with a sharp, angry motion, she lifts the spoon to her mouth. Her eyes flicker. Surprise breaks through her armor for just an instant, then fury at her own reaction. It's nothing, she mutters, just sugar and air. But her hand shakes as she takes another bite. The Coca-Cola bottle is stranger still. Greta holds it cautiously. The glass is heavy, solid. The dark liquid inside looks almost black. She has no idea what to expect. The cap resists at first, then comes free with that sharp hiss. The sound makes her flinch. She lifts it, brings it to her lips, takes a small sip. The fizz explodes across her tongue. Bubbles bite like tiny sparks. The taste is sweet, but also something else. Something dark and complex. Caramel and spice and a sharpness she cannot name. It is unlike anything she has ever experienced. Around her, laughter rises. An American soldier grins at the German women, his voice carrying easy humor. Careful, ladies. That's democracy in a bottle. Some of the women chuckle nervously. Others glare, unsure if the joke is insult or invitation. Greta just stares at the bottle in her hand. Democracy in a bottle. What does that even mean? She takes another sip. The fizz races down her throat, makes her cough slightly. But underneath the shock of carbonation is something undeniable. It tastes good. It tastes like joy. She finishes the bottle, slowly savoring each sip, guilt rising with every swallow. She thinks of her mother rationing herself to keep the youngest children alive, thinks of her sister fainting at school, thinks of the twins crying from hunger. And here she sits, in a prison camp, drinking Coca-Cola. The contradiction is unbearable. That night, lying on a cot that has actual sheets in a barracks that has electricity and running water, Greta listens to the sounds of the camp settling into darkness. Women whisper to each other. Some cry softly, some pray. In the distance, she hears that machine humming, the ice cream maker, steady as a heartbeat. The sound should be absurd, should be offensive, should remind her that she is still a prisoner, still an enemy, still trapped behind wire. Instead, it lulls her, threads into dreams of gardens and laughter and a time before the world caught fire. For the first time since capture, her fear loosens its grip. But just as she begins to drift toward uneasy sleep, a sound shatters the quiet. A guard shouts from the far side of camp, not in anger, in alarm. Boots pound against gravel, voices rise in sharp commands. Something has happened, something that breaks the strange peace of this impossible place. Women sit up in their bunks, eyes wide, hearts racing. Elise's voice cuts through the dark. There, you see, I told you. The kindness was just a mask. Greta says nothing. She lies still, listening to the commotion outside, tasting Coca-Cola on her lips, feeling ice cream's ghost on her tongue. The wire is real. The guns are real. The war is real, but so was the sweetness. And she does not know which truth to believe. The next morning brings answers. At roll call, Captain Hayes stands before the assembled prisoners. His face is grim. Behind him, guards flank a man in handcuffs, a German officer, Oberst Werner Kaufmann, tall and proud even in restraints. His uniform still carries the insignia of rank, though it has been stripped of medals. Hayes speaks in clear, slow German. Last night we discovered that Oberst Kaufmann has been organizing resistance within this camp. He has been holding secret meetings, reminding prisoners that accepting American treatment is treasonous, encouraging defiance and planning potential escapes. The words fall like stones into still water. Let me be absolutely clear, Hayes continues. You are prisoners of war. You are being treated according to international law and the standards of human decency. But do not mistake kindness for weakness. Anyone found undermining camp authority will face consequences. This is not a vacation. This is captivity. And you will remember that. Kaufmann is led away. He does not struggle, does not protest. But as he passes the women, his eyes find Greta's. The look he gives her is cold and knowing. You enjoyed their ice cream. You drank their Coca-Cola. You are weak. You are a traitor. The message is clear without a word being spoken. The women return to their barracks in silence. The joy of the previous evening has curdled. The sweetness has turned bitter in memory. Elise grabs Greta's arm. Her grip is bruising. You see, her voice shakes with vindication. The sugar is only to dull your senses. The wire is the truth. The wire is always the truth. Greta pulls free. She walks to her bunk, sits down heavily. Her hands are shaking. On the small shelf beside her bed sits the empty Coca-Cola bottle. She kept it, does not know why. The glass catches the morning light streaming through the window. The label is slightly torn now, but the white script is still visible. She picks it up, turns it in her hands. The weight is comforting somehow. Outside, the camp continues its routines. Guards patrol, prisoners move between buildings. The smell of breakfast drifts from the mess hall. Eggs and bacon and coffee. Real coffee. Not the ersatz substitutes they drank back home. The real thing. Her stomach growls despite her churning thoughts. Days pass, contrasts sharpen. The prisoners are fed 3 meals a day, more calories than their families back home could dream of. Guards are firm but not cruel. They speak casually about baseball scores, movie stars' dances on Saturday nights. They treat the prisoners not as monsters but as women who happen to be on the wrong side of a war. It feels like stepping into a parallel universe where war exists only at the edges of newspaper headlines. Yet the barbed wire reminds them always, this is not freedom, this is not home. This is a gilded cage built from abundance instead of cruelty, but a cage nonetheless. Two factions begin to form. Elise gathers women around her. The loyalists. They refuse to speak English beyond what is necessary. They eat quickly without enjoyment, treating meals as fuel rather than pleasure. They share stories of German victories, clinging to narratives that are already outdated, already proven false by the march of history. Better rubble than chains, Elise tells them. Do not forget who you are. Do not let them seduce you with sugar. But others begin to soften. They attend English classes offered by guards who seem genuinely interested in teaching. They ask questions about democracy, about elections, about what it means to have rights that cannot be taken away by a government. They allow themselves to sway when swing music drifts from the guard stations. They smile hesitantly at first when soldiers make jokes they do not quite understand, but recognize as attempts at connection rather than mockery. Greta finds herself caught between. Her heart pulls toward curiosity, toward the dangerous possibility that everything she was taught might be wrong. But guilt follows close behind, sharp as broken glass. A letter arrives, smuggled through channels censored heavily but unmistakably from home. Her sister's handwriting cramped and shaky. Mama rations herself to keep the youngest alive. She weighs 80 pounds now. We boil leather for soup. Greta, if you're eating real food there, please don't tell us. It would hurt too much to know. Greta folds the letter with trembling hands, hides it beneath her pillow where it burns like a hot coal even through layers of fabric. That evening, she goes to the mess hall, takes her tray, sits with the others. The food is good, always good. Chicken tonight, mashed potatoes, carrots, pie for dessert, apple pie with a flaky crust and cinnamon that makes her mouth water. She eats in silence. Every bite tastes like betrayal, yet she cannot stop. Her body demands fuel. Her hunger overrides her conscience. She eats until the plate is clean, then sits staring at the empty dish, hating herself. Elise watches from across the table, says nothing, but the judgment in her eyes speaks volumes. That night, Greta cannot sleep. She lies awake listening to the sounds of women breathing in the dark. The barracks smell of soap and clean linen. So different from the field hospitals where she worked, where the air was thick with blood and infection and death. She thinks about the wounded soldiers she treated. Boys, most of them. 18, 19, 20 years old. Blown apart by artillery, burned by fire, gutted by shrapnel. She held their hands as they died. Whispered lies about how it would be okay, how the pain would end soon, how they were heroes. She wonders where those boys are now. In graves dug by comrades, in mass pits covered with lime, in pieces scattered across battlefields that have already been forgotten. And she is here, in Texas, drinking Coca-Cola. The injustice of it crashes over her like a wave. She rolls onto her side, pulls the thin blanket up to her chin. Outside, a spotlight sweeps across the compound. The beam passes over the window, illuminating the room for a brief moment before moving on. In that flash of light, she sees the Coca-Cola bottle on her shelf. Still there, still empty, still catching the light like a promise she does not understand. She closes her eyes. Tomorrow will bring more questions, more contradictions, more moments where abundance and guilt war inside her chest. But tonight in the darkness, with the ice cream machine humming its strange lullaby through the walls, Margaret Weber allows herself a single dangerous thought. What if kindness is not a trick? What if enemies can be human? What if everything she was taught was a lie? The questions terrify her more than bombs ever did. Because if the answers are yes, then she must rebuild her entire understanding of the world. And she is not sure she has the strength for that. The camp settles into rhythms that feel like mockery. Breakfast at 7. The bell clangs across the compound, metallic and insistent. Women rise from cots lined with coarse blankets, their bodies still stiff with memory of marches and trains. But the air carries no scent of fear. Only the earthy promise of coffee brewing, the buttery drift of pancakes, the sweet maple tang of syrup being poured. For Greta, each step toward the mess hall is a negotiation between hunger and pride. Her stomach urges forward. Her conscience whispers caution. The war inside her never stops. Inside, the abundance remains obscene. Platters of scrambled eggs, their yellow bright as summer sunshine. Bacon strips crisp and glistening with fat. Toast stacked high butter, melting in golden pools. and always waiting like sentries at the end of every table, those bottles of Coca-Cola. The women accept their trays with the stiff posture of soldiers, but eat like the civilians they once were. Spoonfuls carried quickly to mouths as if afraid the bounty might vanish, as if someone might realize the mistake and take it all away. Elise remains a fortress. She eats deliberately, chewing with the slow disdain of someone who will not be conquered by sweetness. Her eyes linger not on the food but on the guards, studying their movements, searching for cruelty hidden beneath the smiles. She whispers sharp observations to anyone who will listen. The way that guard's hand rests on his rifle, the way the tower spotlight sweeps the yard in precise arcs each night, the way Captain Hayes watches them during roll call, his expression too neutral, too calculated. Do not forget, she says, a cage gilded in sugar is still a cage. Yet not all share her suspicion. In the afternoons after chores and roll call, the camp opens into something resembling normal life. The Americans organize classes, English lessons where guards patiently explain grammar that tangles the tongue, sewing workshops where women repair torn uniforms and learn to patch American denim, even lectures, democracy they call them, talks about government and freedom and concepts that sound like fairy tales. For the men held in separate compounds, there are labor details outside the wire, work in nearby fields, tasks that earn small wages in camp currency. But for the women, hours drift into strange freedoms. They braid one another's hair, stitch torn hems, sit by barracks windows to watch baseball games in the distance. The crack of the bat is foreign music, rhythmic and joyous. It echoes against the wire as if mocking its purpose. Greta finds herself captivated not by the rules of the game, which make no sense to her, but by its energy. She watches the players run in loops, their faces lit with laughter that seems to exist outside war, as if conflict is something happening on another planet, as if young men are allowed to simply play. One afternoon, Bill Schmidt stands nearby, his cap tilted back, sweat darkening the collar of his uniform. He notices her watching and approaches the fence, speaks in his halting, careful German. You see 3 strikes and you're out, but if you run fast, you are safe. The words carry an accidental poetry. Greta smiles despite herself. The expression feels foreign on her face. Muscles unused for so long they ache. Anna, overhearing from a few meters away, scoffs loudly. Safe, in this place. She turns away, but the corner of her mouth betrays a flicker of something. Envy, perhaps, at Greta's ease, at her willingness to engage. The split between them widens with each passing day. Numbers underpin the contradictions. Back home, ration books dictate lives. 800 calories a day if one is lucky. Sometimes less. Greta remembers her mother's letters. The ink smudged with desperation. Bread stretched with sawdust. Children fainting in schoolrooms. Women trading jewelry for potatoes. Here, prisoners consume more than 3,000 calories daily. Greta does the math in her head. Cannot help herself. Each bite of pie in the camp represents more nutrition than her entire family receives in a week. The guilt is physical, sits in her stomach like lead, makes the sweetness taste bitter. She writes letters home carefully. Omitting mention of ice cream or soda, she describes the barracks, the weather, the routine. She asks about her siblings. She tells her mother she is safe and being treated fairly. She does not say she is being treated well. That distinction matters. Fairness is acceptable. Kindness would cut deeper than any weapon. Still, truth seeps into her. One evening after supper, she sits outside the barracks. The Texas heat has broken slightly. A breeze carries the scent of prairie grass and distant cattle. She sips from a Coca-Cola bottle. The fizz tickles her throat. Bubbles rise like laughter she has forgotten how to make. She tips her head back, watches the sunset paint the sky in streaks of copper and violet. For a moment, she feels herself suspended between 2 worlds, the ashes of Europe and this improbable oasis. Neither feels entirely real. Elise joins her, reluctantly, arms folded, gaze sharp as broken glass. You are forgetting yourself, she warns. Greta answers quietly, not looking at her. Perhaps I am remembering who I once was. Who you were, Elise says, voice hard, was a girl who believed in something, who stood for her country even when it was difficult. That girl would not laugh with the enemy, would not drink their poison and call it kindness. It is not poison, Greta says. It is just Coca-Cola. It is the same thing. They sit in tense silence. The sun continues its descent. Colors deepen. Purple bleeds into indigo. Stars begin to emerge bright and cold. Finally, Greta speaks again. Do you never wonder if we were lied to about them? Elise's response is immediate. No, but the word comes too quickly, too forcefully. And in that quickness, Greta hears doubt. Camp life blurs boundaries between captivity and ordinary living. Music spills from radios in the guard huts. Swing tunes with trumpets that lift spirits even when lyrics are incomprehensible. Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller. Names that mean nothing to the German women, but sounds that make their bodies remember joy. Some nights, the Americans set up dances, invite civilian volunteers from nearby towns to mingle with guards. The women watch from shadows. The rhythm tugs at their bones, a reminder of youth wasted on uniforms. Greta sways unconsciously, just slightly, her hips moving to the beat, her shoulders loosening. Elise catches her arm, grips it like an anchor. Do not let them seduce you, she hisses. But even Elise's eyes linger on the spinning skirts. The quick joy of strangers who have never heard bombs fall, who have never dug through rubble looking for pieces of people they loved. Rumors circulate with the smoke of campfires lit in the recreation areas. Some men embrace the re-education classes. Fascinated by talk of freedom and individual rights, they attend eagerly, take notes, ask questions that their guards answer with surprising patience. Others seethe, cling to ideology like a lifeline, gather in tight knots to whisper about loyalty and betrayal, about the day Germany will rise again and punish those who collaborated. The women stand between, uncertain which path to follow. Greta feels the tug of curiosity, the dangerous desire to believe in kindness, to imagine a world where governments serve people instead of the reverse, where voices matter, where choice is not treason. Elise clings to defiance, convinced it is the only armor left to her, the only thing that separates her from complete dissolution. The surveillance is constant. Spotlights sweep the barracks at night. Boots crunch along patrol paths. Towers loom like silent judges. Yet within those confines, life blooms in odd, defiant ways. One woman paints scenes of home on scraps of cardboard, mountains and forests and villages that may no longer exist. Another composes poems about the absurdity of ice cream in a prison. Humor sparks like flint. They nickname Coca-Cola soft war juice and laugh softly at the irony of drinking the enemy's pride from glass bottles. Even Elise cracks a smile once, though she buries it quickly beneath her scowl. Greta begins to sense that survival here is not about enduring hunger or violence. Those would be simple, straightforward, expected. This is about navigating abundance without losing oneself. Sweetness is as dangerous as bullets. It blurs the line between enemy and benefactor. Each sip of soda softens resistance. Each scoop of ice cream melts suspicion. She wrestles with the guilt of enjoyment, the betrayal it seems to represent, and the fragile hope it carries. One night, lying on her cot, she listens to the distant hum of the ice cream machine. Steady as a heartbeat, the sound is absurd in its comfort, yet it lulls her, threads into dreams of gardens and laughter. She awakes with Elise's voice in her ear, harsh and certain. They want you to forget the rubble. But the rubble is all that waits for us. Greta turns her face toward the window. Beyond the wire, the guard towers glow like watchful eyes. She thinks of Bill's clumsy German, of Captain Hayes' wry smile, of the sweetness dissolving too fast on her tongue. She cannot decide which is more dangerous, the fences that hold her body or the abundance that threatens to claim her heart. Then one evening, as dusk settles like ash, something shifts. Greta stands near the fence, not too close, close enough to be improper, but far enough to avoid accusations. The day's heat still radiates from the packed earth. Cicadas sing their electric songs in the grass beyond the wire. She is alone, or thinks she is. Then she hears it, a sound that stops her breath. Someone is humming, low and soft, a melody she knows, a lullaby her grandmother sang, a tune from Bavaria, from home. from a time before flags and uniforms and war. She turns slowly. Bill Schmidt stands on the other side of the fence. 20 meters away. He has not seen her yet. His back is to the setting sun. He whistles the same tune he was humming. The notes drift across the space between them like smoke. Greta's throat tightens. She does not move. Cannot move. The sound unlocks something in her chest. A door she had sealed shut. Bill turns, sees her. His whistling stops. For a long moment, they simply look at each other. The wire between them suddenly feels both insurmountable and meaningless. He speaks first, in German. My Oma used to sing that. She came from Heidelberg. Greta finds her voice. My grandmother sang it too, in Hamburg. It's an old song, Bill says. Older than countries, older than wars. He walks closer to the fence, still keeping the proper distance, still aware that others might be watching. But his eyes hold hers. She never spoke about the war, he continues. The first war, I mean. She left Germany in 1920, came to Wisconsin, married my grandfather, had 5 children, worked in a bakery, made strudel that people came from 3 towns over to buy. Greta listens. Something in his voice makes her want to hear more. She died before this war started. I was 16. She held my hand and told me in German, because she never lost her accent. She told me, Menschen sind Menschen. People are people. No matter what uniform they wear, no matter what flag they salute. He pauses, looks down at his own uniform, the American eagle on his shoulder, the rifle slung across his back. I joined up in 1942. My friends were going, my brothers went. I thought maybe I would fight Germans and it would feel wrong, like fighting family. He looks up at her again. But then I got assigned here, to guard Germans. And I realized Oma was right. You're just people. Greta feels something crack inside her, a wall she did not know she had built. Does that make you a traitor? She asks softly. To your uniform, Bill considers this. I don't think so. I think it makes me her grandson. She taught me to see people. The uniform doesn't change that. But we are enemies, Greta says. Your country and mine. We are at war. Our countries are at war, Bill corrects. You and I are just talking across a fence. The distinction seems small, meaningless, yet it resonates like a bell struck in the quiet evening. Greta grips the fence. Her fingers wrap around the wire. It cuts slightly into her skin. The pain grounds her. They told us you would be monsters, she says, that Americans were cruel, that you would starve us and beat us and leave us to die. They told us you were monsters too, Bill replies. Nazis, fanatics, people who enjoyed killing. And what do you think now? He smiles, bad and small. I think you're a nurse who probably saved a lot of lives. I think you're scared and homesick and trying to make sense of a world that stopped making sense a long time ago. Tears sting Greta's eyes. She blinks them back. Will not cry, cannot cry. Not here, not in front of him. But the kindness in his voice is harder to bear than any cruelty could be. My grandmother is dying, she says suddenly. Does not know why she tells him this, but the words pour out like water from a broken dam. My sister writes that she weighs 80 pounds. They have no food, nothing. And here I am eating ice cream, drinking Coca-Cola, while she starves. Bill's face creases with genuine pain. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, Greta says, voice sharpening. Being sorry doesn't help. It just makes it harder. What would help? She laughs, a bitter sound. Ending the war, turning back time, never starting any of this, nothing that is possible. They stand in silence, the space between them filled with all the things that cannot be said, all the contradictions that cannot be resolved. Finally, Bill speaks again. My Oma used to say something else. She said guilt is just love with nowhere to go. You love your grandmother, your family. That's good. That's human. But punishing yourself doesn't feed them. It's all I can do, Greta whispers. No, Bill says gently. You can survive. You can stay human. You can remember that even in the middle of hell, people can be kind. And maybe when this is over, you can take that knowledge and build something better. Greta looks at him. really looks, sees not a guard, not an American, not the enemy, just a man, young and uncertain and trying to make sense of the same senseless world. They will call me a traitor, she says, for talking to you like this, for listening. Are they right? I don't know anymore. Bill reaches into his pocket, pulls out something small, a photograph. He holds it up to the fence where she can see it. A young woman in traditional Bavarian dress, smiling, holding a tray of pastries. That's my Oma, he says. Taken in Milwaukee, 1925. She looks happy there. Free. She used to tell me America gave her that. The chance to just be herself. Not German, not American. Just Maria. A woman who made good strudel and loved her grandchildren. He puts the photograph away. I think about her when I'm here, when I see you all. I think about how she would want me to treat you. And I know the answer. With dignity, with kindness, because that's what she taught me. Greta feels the wall inside her crumble further. Each word he speaks is a hammer blow against the ideology she was raised with. The propaganda that painted Americans as demons. The lies that said enemies were less than human. If Bill is the enemy, then the enemy is just a man who loved his grandmother. And that realization terrifies her more than bombs ever did. Because if he is human, then what does that make her? What does that make the war? What does that make all the death and suffering and sacrifice footsteps approach? Both of them straighten. Bill steps back from the fence, assumes his professional demeanor. A guard on patrol, nothing more. But as he walks away, he turns once, catches her eye, nods slightly. Greta nods back. When she returns to the barracks, Elise is waiting. I saw you, she says, voice cold, talking to the guard, the one who speaks German. We were just talking, Greta says. Just talking. Elise repeats the words like they taste foul. Do you know what they will say? Back home when we return, they will say you collaborated, that you fraternized with the enemy, that you betrayed everything. We talked about his grandmother, Greta says, voice rising. About a song, about humanity, that's all. That's everything, Elise spits. Don't you understand? Every word you speak to them is a betrayal. Every smile, every moment you let them think they can reach you. You are giving them exactly what they want. And what is that? Your soul. The word hangs between them. Heavy, absolute. Greta feels exhaustion crash over her. Maybe I don't have a soul left to give. Maybe the war took it already. Then fight to get it back, Elise says. Don't surrender it for ice cream and lies. She turns away, but before she leaves, she speaks again. Quieter this time. They are planning classes, re-education they call it, teaching us about democracy, about freedom, about American values. She looks back at Greta. You will not attend. It is not a request, it is a command. And if I do, Greta asks, then you choose sides, and I will know where you stand. Elise leaves. The door swings shut behind her. The sound echoes in the barracks like a judgment. Greta sits on her bunk. Her hands are shaking. She does not know if it is fear or anger or something else entirely. On the shelf beside her bed, the Coca-Cola bottle catches the last light of evening. Empty, but somehow still full of promise, of questions, of possibilities that should not exist. She picks it up, turns it slowly in her hands. The glass is smooth and cool. The label is faded now from handling, but the script remains visible. Democracy in a bottle. She thinks about Bill's grandmother, about a woman who crossed an ocean to find freedom, about strudel and grandchildren in the simple dignity of being human. She thinks about her own grandmother, dying in Hamburg, too weak to stand, too proud to complain. She thinks about The Wire, and the sweetness, and the terrible, impossible choice she is being forced to make. Be loyal to the past or open to the future. Cling to hate or risk kindness. Stay safe in certainty or step into the terrifying possibility that everything she believed was wrong. Outside, night falls complete. Stars emerge, cold and distant and indifferent to the struggles of humans below. Somewhere in the camp, someone plays a harmonica. The tune is American. Something about home on the range. The notes drift through the darkness, lonely and beautiful. Greta lies back on her cot, closes her eyes. Knows that sleep will not come easily tonight, because tomorrow the Americans are offering their first class. Introduction to Democracy, they call it. An hour in the recreation hall. Optional attendance. No one forced. And she knows with absolute certainty that she will go. Not because she believes them, not because she has chosen sides, but because Bill's grandmother sang a Bavarian lullaby in Milwaukee, because enemies can whistle songs from home, because the wire is real, but so is the sweetness. And she needs to understand which truth will sustain her when she finally goes home to the rubble. Morning comes with the weight of decision. Greta stands outside the recreation hall. The door is open. Inside, she can see rows of chairs, a blackboard at the front, Captain Hayes standing beside it, his uniform pressed, his expression neutral, welcoming but not insistent. Other prisoners file in slowly, some curious, some defiant, some simply bored and looking for distraction from the monotony of captivity. Elise stands 30 meters away, arms crossed, watching. Her gaze is a physical pressure against Greta's back. Greta takes a breath, steps inside. The room smells of chalk dust and wood polish. Hayes nods to her, says nothing, does not make a show of her attendance. For this she is grateful. She takes a seat near the back, close enough to hear, far enough to maintain the illusion of distance. Hayes begins to speak. His German is better than Bill's, more formal. He has clearly studied. Today we talk about democracy, about government by the people, about the idea that power comes not from the state, but from individuals. That rights are not given by leaders. They are inherent. They belong to you simply because you exist. The words sound like fiction, like fairy tales told to children. Greta was raised to believe the opposite, that the state is supreme, that individuals exist to serve the greater good, that rights are privileges granted by those in power and can be revoked when necessary. Yet Hayes speaks with such conviction, such certainty, as if these bayans are not fantasy but foundation, as if entire nations have been built on this impossible premise. He draws on the blackboard, simple diagrams, government structures, checks and balances, separation of powers, concepts that tangle in Greta's mind like foreign grammar. In a democracy, Hayes says, you choose your leaders. If they fail you, you remove them. Peacefully, through votes, not through violence or revolution. The power always remains with the people. A prisoner raises her hand. Older woman. Frau Holtz. She worked in a factory before the war. But what if the people choose wrong, she asks. Hayes considers this. Then they learn. They choose differently next time. Democracy is not perfect. It is messy, chaotic. Sometimes people elect leaders who disappoint them. But the ability to correct mistakes without bloodshed, that is the strength, not the weakness. The conversation continues, questions and answers. Some prisoners engage eagerly. Others sit in hostile silence. Greta says nothing, just listens, absorbs, tries to reconcile these ideas with everything she has been taught. When the hour ends, she files out with the others. Her mind is spinning. Thoughts collide like particles in a chamber too small to contain them. Elise intercepts her in the yard. Her face is rigid with fury. You went. It is not a question. It is an accusation. I listened, Greta says. That is all. That is everything. Elise's voice rises. Other women turn to look. Do you think this is innocent? They are trying to break us, to make us doubt, to turn us against ourselves. They are just talking, Greta protests, about ideas, about how their government works. They are teaching us to betray our country. Elise steps closer. Her breath is hot against Greta's face. You think you can dabble in their propaganda, take a little here, reject a little there. It doesn't work that way. Every word you hear is poison. It seeps in, changes you, makes you question everything. Maybe I should question everything, Greta says. The words surprise her. She did not know she was going to say them. Elise's eyes widen, then narrow. So you admit it. You are turning. I am thinking, Greta says. Is that a crime? Yes. The word cracks like a whip. When thinking means abandoning loyalty, when thinking means forgetting who you are. Around them a crowd has gathered, women watching, waiting to see which side will prevail. The tension is electric, dangerous. Another voice speaks. Frida, young, 20 years old. She worked as a clerk before being conscripted. She has been writing letters, Frida says. Her voice carries across the yard, telling her family the Americans are kind, spreading lies. The accusation detonates like a grenade. Greta's stomach drops. That's not true. I never wrote that. You told your sister you were being treated fairly, Frida insists, that the guards were not cruel, that you had enough to eat. Because it's true, Greta says desperately. I won't lie to my family. The truth can be a lie, Elise says, voice cold. When you tell them you have food while they starve, you are choosing the enemy over your own blood. The circle of women tightens. Greta can feel their judgment pressing in. Some faces show sympathy. Others show anger. Most show fear. Fear that association with her will contaminate them. We should decide, Elise announces, here, now, whether she is one of us or one of them. A trial, Frau Holtz asks uncertain. A judgment, Elise corrects. We are not children. We know collaboration when we see it. She attends their classes, laughs with their guards, drinks their Coca-Cola with gratitude instead of shame. Where does it end? Greta looks around at the faces. Women she has lived beside for months, shared meals with, slept in barracks with. Now they look at her like she is foreign, dangerous. What happens if you find me guilty, she asks quietly. We remember, Elise says, and when we return home, your name is remembered too. Collaboration is not forgotten. Not in Germany, not ever. The threat is clear. In a defeated nation looking for scapegoats, collaborators do not survive long. Their names are whispered, their families shunned, sometimes worse. Greta feels the earth tilt beneath her feet. 3 days, Elise says. We give you 3 days to decide who you are. Then we vote. The crowd disperses slowly, uncomfortable, unsure if what just happened was justice or cruelty. Greta stands alone in the yard. The Texas sun beats down. Sweat runs down her back. Her hands shake. She has 3 days to prove her loyalty. But loyalty to what? To a regime that is collapsing? To a country that sent her to die? To an ideology that is being dismantled by every moment she spends in this place? Or loyalty to something else? Something harder to name. Truth. Humanity. The dangerous possibility that kindness can exist even between enemies. That night, she does not sleep. She lies awake, listening to the sounds of the barracks, women breathing, someone crying softly, someone else praying in whispered German. The ice cream machine hums in the distance. That steady, absurd heartbeat. She thinks about Bill's grandmother, about democracy in a bottle, about the wire and the sweetness and the impossible choice. 3 days pass like fever dreams. Greta moves through routines mechanically, eats without tasting, speaks only when necessary, avoids eye contact with everyone, both the accusers and the sympathizers. Bill tries to approach her once. She turns away, cannot afford even that connection now. On the third evening, the women gather in the barracks. No guards. This is internal, private, their own justice. Elise stands at the front, judge and prosecutor both. She presents the evidence. Greta attended the democracy class. Greta smiled at guards. Greta wrote letters that portrayed captivity in positive terms. Greta accepted extra rations without protest. Greta drank Coca-Cola like it was medicine instead of poison. Each accusation lands like a stone. Then Frida speaks again. I saw her teaching the German guard our language, not just words, poetry, songs from childhood. She is giving them pieces of us. This is the deepest cut, because it is true. She did teach Bill the words to the lullaby, did share fragments of culture, did create connection where none should exist. Greta stands. Her legs feel weak, but she forces them steady. I have done nothing but try to survive, she says. Her voice sounds small in the crowded room. Is that a crime to eat when offered food, to learn when offered knowledge, to be kind when shown kindness? Yes, Elise says simply, when it means forgetting who you are. And who am I, Greta asks. The question is not rhetorical. She genuinely does not know anymore. You are German, Elise says. That is all that matters. That is all that should ever matter. Before Greta can respond, the door opens. Bill Schmidt stands in the entrance. His presence is a violation of protocol. He should not be here. This is the women's barracks, off limits except for emergencies. But he enters anyway. The room falls silent. Every eye turns to him. He speaks in German, directly to Elise. His voice is steady, but there is steel underneath. My grandmother fled Germany in 1920. She told me about the old country, the beauty, the culture, the people. She loved Germany. He pauses. But she left because she loved freedom more. He turns to address all of them. You think accepting kindness makes you traitors. But my Oma said the real betrayal is letting hate consume you. The real loyalty is to your humanity, not to a regime that sent you to die. Elise stands, furious. You have no right to speak here. I have every right, Bill says, voice rising, because in 2 years, maybe less, this war will end. You will go back to a Germany that is destroyed, and you will have a choice. Rebuild with bitterness or rebuild with the memory that even enemies can be human. He pulls something from his pocket, a newspaper, recent. He holds it up so they can see the headline. Berlin is falling, he says quietly. The Soviets are in the streets. The Third Reich has maybe weeks left, maybe days. The words hit like physical blows. Women gasp. Some begin to cry. Others sit in stunned silence. You can spend these last days hating each other, Bill continues, fighting over who is loyal and who is not. Or you can prepare for what comes next, for survival in a world that will have no use for the old hatreds. He looks at Greta. Their eyes meet across the crowded room. This woman taught me a song, he says, a lullaby my Oma used to sing. It reminded me that borders are made up, flags are made up, but humanity is real. Kindness is real. And those things will last long after nations fall. He turns back to Elise. You want to judge her, fine, but judge her for the right things, not for surviving, not for staying human. Judge her if she becomes cruel, if she forgets mercy, if she loses her soul to bitterness. His voice softens, but I have seen no evidence of that, only a young woman trying to make sense of a senseless world. He leaves. The door closes behind him. The silence he leaves is profound. Slowly, women begin to whisper. The certainty Elise built starts to crack. Frau Holt stands. I do not think we should do this. We are not Nazis. We are not judges. We are just women trying to survive. Others nod. Murmur agreement. The trial dissolves. No verdict given. No judgment passed. But the damage is done. The camp is divided. Trust is shattered. Even those who sided with Greta do so quietly, afraid to be marked as collaborators themselves. Elise retreats into cold silence. She gathers her loyalists around her like armor. They vow to remain unchanged, to return home as pure as they left. Greta lies awake that night knowing she has crossed a threshold. There is no going back. Whatever waits for her in Germany, it will not be welcome. Not anymore. 2 nights later, everything changes again. 3 male prisoners attempt escape. They cut through a section of fence in the darkness, make it nearly 100 meters before searchlights find them. One is shot in the leg, not killed, but bloodied, screaming. The sound wakes the entire camp. Greta watches from the barracks window as guards swarm the area, as the wounded man is carried to the infirmary, as the other 2 are restrained and led away in handcuffs. The next morning, Captain Hayes calls an assembly. His face is harder than Greta has ever seen it. You are treated well here, he says, voice carrying across the silent ranks. You receive food, shelter, medical care. You are given work and wages. You attend classes if you wish. You are protected by international law. He pauses. But do not mistake kindness for weakness. You are prisoners of war. The war is not over. Anyone who attempts escape will face consequences. He gestures to the infirmary where the wounded man is being treated. We shot to wound, not to kill. We provided immediate medical care. He will survive. Another pause. But the next person who tries this may not be so fortunate. Do not test us. Do not force us to choose between mercy and security. The assembly is dismissed. Women return to barracks in subdued groups. Elise finds Greta in the yard. For once, her voice holds no triumph, only exhaustion. You see, she says, the sugar is only to dull your senses. The wire is the truth. The wire is always the truth. Greta nods slowly. Yes, the wire is real. The guns are real. She looks at Elise. But so is the ice cream. So is the Coca-Cola. Cola. Both things are true. They cannot both be true, Elise insists. But they are, Greta says softly. That is what I am learning. The world is more complicated than we were taught. People can be kind and cruel, generous and dangerous. The same hands that give you Coca-Cola also hold rifles. Both are real. Both matter. Elise stares at her for a long moment, then turns away without another word. That night, a smuggled newspaper makes its way through the camp. The headline is stark and undeniable. Germany surrenders unconditionally. War in Europe ends. The date is May 8, 1945. The women gather around the single copy, passing it hand to hand with trembling fingers. Some sob openly. Some sit in shocked silence. Some pray. The world they knew is over. Everything they believed in has collapsed. The Reich that was supposed to last 1,000 years lasted 12. Now they must return to the ashes. Guards cheer outside. Rifles are fired into the air in celebration. Laughter and music spill from the American buildings. They have won. It is over. They can go home. But for the German women, victory is a foreign concept. They have only defeat, only ruin waiting across an ocean. Only the certainty that the homes they left no longer exist. Greta sits on her bunk, the newspaper clutched in her hands. She should feel something. Relief, grief, fear. But there is only numbness. A vast emptiness where emotion should be. Elise appears beside her. Her face is gray, older suddenly, as if the news has aged her a decade in minutes. They will send us back now, she says. Her voice is hollow. Back to nothing. All this, she gestures at the barracks, at the camp, at the abundance they have lived in for months, was only a performance. Now it ends, and the real suffering begins. That night, Greta hears sounds from Elise's bunk. Soft, almost inaudible, but unmistakable. Crying. She rises quietly, approaches, sits on the edge of Elise's cot. In the darkness, Elise's armor finally cracks completely. My son, she whispers, 4 years old when I left. I don't even know if he is alive. She pulls something from beneath her pillow, a small locket, opens it. Inside is a photograph so worn it is barely visible. A boy with light hair, smiling. Klaus, she says. I named him after my father. He had just learned to write his name. He wrote it for me on a piece of paper. I kept it. But I lost it somewhere. Between France and here. I lost the last thing I had of him. Her body shakes with sobs she has held for years. All the hardness melts away. Beneath the ideology and anger is just a mother terrified for her child. Greta holds her while she weeps, says nothing. There are no words that can help. In this moment, their division dissolves. They are not collaborator and loyalist, not German and German, just two frightened women going home to uncertainty. I have been so angry, Elise says finally, at you, at them, at everyone, because anger was easier than fear, easier than admitting I might never see him again. I know, Greta says. Do you think he remembers me? Elise asks, voice like a child's. Yes, Greta says, though she has no way of knowing. Children remember their mothers, always. They sit together until dawn begins to lighten the sky. Orders come quickly after that. The women will be repatriated within 2 weeks. They will board ships at Galveston, sail back across the Atlantic to whatever remains of Germany. They pack their meager belongings, letters, scraps of fabric, sketches made during idle afternoons, proof that they existed, that they survived. The barracks that once hummed with routine now tremble with anticipation and dread. On their final evening, the Americans hold one last supper. The mess hall is transformed, tables covered with white cloth, more food than Greta has ever seen in one place. Roast chicken, buttered corn, fresh bread, pies. So many pies, apple and cherry and pecan. And in the center of each table, arranged like offerings, bottles of Coca-Cola gleam in the light. The women enter slowly, unsure if this is kindness or mockery. unable to bridge the chasm between these full plates and the starvation they know waits across the ocean. Captain Hayes stands at the front, raises his voice. Ladies, tomorrow you go home. Tonight we share a final meal, not as captors and prisoners, but as humans who survived a terrible war together. He pauses. May this meal remind you not of captivity, but of possibility. May it remind you that even enemies can break bread, and that the world, when we let it, can be more generous than we imagine. He lifts a bottle of Coca-Cola to the end of war and to the hope that peace brings. The women sit. For a long moment, no one moves. Then slowly, Greta reaches for her bottle, unscrews the cap. The hiss echoes in the silence, sharp and final. Others follow, one by one, until the hall fills with the chorus of fizzing glass, a strange symphony of endings and beginnings. Greta takes a sip. The bubbles race across her tongue, familiar now, but still startling, still sweet, still carrying that promise she cannot quite name. She thinks of her mother likely dead by now, of her sister raising children in rubble, of letters that stopped coming, of hunger that will greet her when she steps off the ship. She thinks of Bill's grandmother and her strudel, of democracy that sounds like fiction, of guards who whistle Bavarian lullabies, of the wire that was real and the kindness that was also real. This sweetness is not just sugar, it is memory, choice, a fragile possibility of life after ruin. Across the hall, Elise sits rigid, refusing her bottle, arms crossed, eyes blazing with old defiance. But as silence stretches and the meal continues and laughter begins to rise cautiously from some tables, Elise reaches out suddenly, her movements sharp with anger. She unscrews the cap with a violent twist, lifts it high. For Germany, she says, voice bitter, and drinks deeply. The gesture is both surrender and rebellion, an admission that even she cannot resist the pull of sweetness, though she cloaks it in patriotic rage. Dawn arrives with trucks rumbling into the compound. Women file out, breath clouding in cool morning air, belongings bundled tight. They line up for the last time. The last roll call. Guards stand at attention along the path to the vehicles. Their faces are solemn now, stripped of celebration. This is goodbye, an ending that carries weight. Captain Hayes stands at the gate, hands clasped behind his back, eyes scanning each woman as if memorizing faces he will never see again. When Greta passes, he gives a single nod. Acknowledgement, farewell, perhaps a silent wish for her survival in the ruins. Before boarding, each prisoner is handed a final gift. One bottle of Coca-Cola. The glass is cold against Greta's palm. Condensation wets her skin. She holds it with both hands. This small thing, this symbol, this promise made of sugar and carbonation in the memory of kindness. Around her, women clutch their bottles with the reverence reserved for relics. Even the loyalists, even those who swore they would forget this place the moment they left. Elise sneers as she takes hers, mutters that it is nothing, just sugar water, just propaganda, but her grip is tight, as if she is afraid someone might take it from her. Bill appears as Greta climbs into the truck. He presses something into her free hand, a photograph, himself in uniform. On the back, written in careful German, "You will see America again one day, and when you do, you will be free to choose who you want to be." Their eyes meet, no words, just understanding that transcends wire and war and all the ideologies that tried to keep them apart. The trucks rumble forward, carrying them toward ships, toward ruin, toward futures none can yet imagine. Greta sits with the bottle pressed to her chest. The engine's hum vibrates through her bones. She closes her eyes, thinks of ice cream melting, swing music drifting through wire, laughter that returned when she least expected it. She thinks of her family, of hunger, of rebuilding. She thinks of the hiss when the cap came off, the fizz that rose like a promise. As the camp recedes into distance, fences shrinking against the horizon, she understands. The war carves scars she will carry forever. But in her hand, she holds something else. A memory of sweetness in the midst of ruin. Proof that even in chains, she glimpsed another world. She lifts the bottle to her lips, takes one last sip before saving the rest. It burns and sparkles, too sweet and too fleeting. a taste that will haunt her long after the glass is empty. In that moment, as dawn splits the horizon with light, Greta realizes this is not an ending. It is a threshold. The wire no longer holds her. The true test waits beyond. Chicago, Illinois, 1985. An elderly woman walks through a grocery store. Her cart is nearly full, bread and milk and vegetables, the ordinary supplies of an ordinary life. She stops at the soda aisle, reaches for a glass bottle of Coca-Cola. Her hands are wrinkled now, liver spotted, but steady. The cashier smiles as she checks out. "Big anniversary sale on those today," she says. "Been drinking Coke long." The woman's smile is small and distant. 40 years, she says, give or take. She drives home through Chicago streets, parks in front of a modest house with a well-kept garden, lets herself inside. On her desk in the small office, where she keeps her nursing certificates and family photographs, sits an empty Coca-Cola bottle, 1945 vintage. The label faded to near invisibility, but she knows every curve, every scratch in the glass. Beside it, a photograph, a young man in American uniform. The writing on the back is still legible after all these years. Margaret Weber once called. Greta opens the fresh bottle. That familiar hiss. 4 decades later, and the sound still makes her breath catch. She sits, sips slowly, remembers. She returned to Hamburg in June 1945. Her mother had died 3 weeks before. Her sister was raising 2 children in a bombed-out building. For 5 years, they lived on scraps, on hope, on the kindness of strangers. In 1950, she applied for immigration to America. Used Bill's letter as a reference. It took 11 months, but the visa came. She arrived in New York Harbor in 1951. First thing she did was buy a Coca-Cola from a street vendor. Drank it watching the Statue of Liberty. Cried like a child. She became a nurse in Chicago. Married a teacher named James. Good man. Never asked too much about the war. They had 2 daughters, grandchildren now. For 40 years, she kept that photograph, kept that bottle, reminders of the moment she learned enemies could be human. The phone rings. She answers. "Mrs. Weber, this is the Continental Hotel. We wanted to confirm your reservation for the reunion next week." "Yes," she says, "I'll be there." Former POWs and American Guards, 40th anniversary reunion. She has been gathering courage for months, wondering if he will be there, if he even remembers her, if the connection she felt was real or just the desperation of captivity creating meaning where none existed. The week passes slowly. She packs carefully. The photograph, a copy of the letter. And on impulse, she wraps the empty bottle in tissue paper, packs it gently in her suitcase. The hotel ballroom is full of old faces trying to recognize each other through 4 decades of aging. Name tags help, handshakes and embraces and tears. She scans the room, heart pounding harder than it should. She is 70 now, too old for this kind of nervousness. Then she sees him, William Schmidt, now 68, gray-haired but unmistakable, wearing his old uniform. The patch is faded, but the fit still good. Their eyes meet across the crowded room. She walks toward him slowly. He does the same. They meet in the middle. For a moment, neither speaks. Then Bill smiles. That same gentle smile. "Ich wusste du würdest kommen," he says in German. "I knew you would come." Her voice breaks. "I never stopped looking for you." They embrace. 2 old friends once divided by wire. Now just 2 survivors who helped each other stay human. They find a quiet corner. Sit with coffee and pastries neither really wants. Talk for hours. He stayed in the military, retired as a colonel, married, 3 kids, lost his wife to cancer 5 years ago, lives in Wisconsin now, near where his grandmother's bakery used to be. She tells him about Hamburg, about the rebuilding, about nursing and her family, and the life she built from ashes. "I tried to find you," Bill says, "after the war, but the records were chaotic. So many displaced people. I didn't know if you survived." "I almost didn't," she admits. "The first years were hard, very hard." "Did they?" He pauses. "Did people call you a collaborator?" She looks down at her coffee. "Some did. My sister defended me, said I survived with dignity. That was enough for most. But there were whispers, always whispers. I'm sorry." "Don't be." She looks up. "You taught me something important. that surviving with humanity is not betrayal, it's victory. She reaches into her bag, pulls out the tissue-wrapped bottle, unwraps it carefully. Bill's eyes widen. You kept it. 40 years, she says, on my desk. A reminder. Of what, she considers this, that enemies can whistle lullabies, that kindness can exist even in captivity, that the world is more complicated and more generous than we are taught. Bill reaches out, touches the bottle gently. My Oma would have liked you. I wish I could have ever met her. They sit in comfortable silence. The party continues around them, old soldiers and former prisoners finding common ground and shared history. Finally, Greta speaks again. I need to tell you something. About Elise. Bill listens as she explains. How Elise returned to East Germany. How Greta tried to find her for decades. How in 1982 a letter arrived. She died the year before, but her son wrote to me. Klaus, he's alive. A teacher in Dresden. She smiles through sudden tears. He said his mother never stopped talking about the girl who chose kindness over loyalty. He said she kept her Coca-Cola bottle too, hidden in a drawer. He didn't understand why until he read her journals after she died. What did the journals say? That she was wrong, that she let bitterness poison her for years, that she finally understood late in life that staying human was not betrayal. Greta wipes her eyes. She wanted me to know she understood, that she forgave me, that she hoped I could forgive her. Bill takes her hand, says nothing. Sometimes silence is the only adequate response to grief and grace intertwined. As the evening winds down, organizers gather everyone for a final photograph. Former guards and former prisoners standing together, smiling, arms around shoulders that once belonged to enemies. Greta stands beside Bill, holds the empty bottle in one hand, his arm around her shoulders. The flash goes off, capturing this moment, this impossible moment, where wire and sweetness both existed and both mattered. Later, back in her hotel room, she opens the fresh Coca-Cola she bought from the vending machine, takes a sip, that same fizz, that same sweetness. She thinks about the girl she was, 22 and terrified, caught between loyalty and humanity, between hate and hope. She thinks about the woman she became, nurse and immigrant and survivor, someone who chose possibility over certainty, kindness over bitterness. She thinks about all the people who said she was wrong, who called her traitor, who insisted that accepting the enemy's generosity was unforgivable. And she thinks about Bill's grandmother, about Strudel in Milwaukee and the simple truth that people are people. She finishes the Coca-Cola, sets the empty bottle beside its 40-year-old twin on the desk. 2 bottles now, 2 eras, the same promise. Outside her window, Chicago glows with evening lights. Somewhere in this city, her daughters sleep in their own homes. Her grandchildren dream their innocent dreams. The life she built continues, thrives. The wire no longer holds her, has not held her for 4 decades. But that taste, that sweetness, that moment when enemies became human and the world revealed itself to be more complex and more beautiful than propaganda ever allowed. Oh, she never stopped chasing it, and she never will. Because sometimes the greatest weapon is not a bomb or a bullet or a belief. Sometimes it is a bottle of Coca-Cola and the courage to share it.